Imagine a world where ambition is both a guiding light and an unseen chain. A world where endless work is worn like a medal of success, yet also unlocks the door to burnout and loneliness. In that world, there lived someone known by a reverent name, the Sleepless Weaver. People said she could weave cloth that, with a single touch, made your heart tremble as if hearing an ancient song. Her threads shone like moonlight, soft as breath, so enduring that some believed they could hold the very memory of time. The entire kingdom knew her. Nobles, artisans, even the king praised her unmatched skill and tireless devotion. But one truth no one really knew: she never slept. When the sun went down and others rested, a small lamp still glowed in her hillside room, and the loom's cadence beat on, steady as the heart of the night. "One more thread," she whispered. "One more line, and then I'll rest." But night after night, the same promise returned like a gentle curse. Threads piled upon threads, becoming exquisite cloth, and also an unbroken chain of days that never truly stopped. In our modern world, we are much like her. Our looms aren't carved from wood, but from blue-lit screens. Our threads aren't wool or silk, but emails, messages, notifications that never cease. Whenever we're tired, we tell ourselves, just a little more. And somehow, that little more stretches on forever. The weaver believed that if she stopped, everything would fall apart. If she rested, who would keep weaving the dreams of others? Who would fill the space she left behind? She believed her worth lived in limitless giving, so she refused to allow herself even the smallest weakness. Every new thread, every new length of cloth, felt like a victory. But inside each victory, a part of her spirit quietly faded. And perhaps, in the long silence of those nights, the loom itself began to echo back. If no one ever pauses, who will still have the strength to see the beauty they've made? The Sleepless Weaver is not only an old story. It is a mirror of our age, where productivity measures value, and rest is mistaken for laziness. We live in an era that praises always on, where we tell ourselves we must do more, faster, better, when what we truly need is a single breath to return to ourselves. Pause for a moment, and you'll see we are weaving our entire lives with threads of worry, ambition, and fear. Each day we add more lines of have to, be better, prove it. We forget something simple. Not every cloth must be perfect to be beautiful. Life, like art, needs empty spaces, gaps left unwoven, so that light can pass through. One night, moonlight fell across her unfinished cloth. The weaver looked up, and for a breath of time, she saw thousands of stars, each one a radiant thread of the universe, weaving a vast tapestry without anyone forcing it to be made. And she wondered, does the universe work without rest the way I do? Or is it the rest between sunset and sunrise that keeps everything alive? Perhaps that was the beginning of her awakening. Sometimes the journey back to peace begins with a small question. Simple, but capable of changing how we see the world and ourselves. At first, the weaver noticed nothing. Night after night, she worked. Her hands moved, her eyes followed each thread, and then something in the room had changed. The lamp's flame began to flicker. Threads tangled more easily. A tiny crease appeared in the fabric, one she had never allowed before. She frowned, pulled the thread, wove again. But near completion, another flaw. Then a loosened seam, then a patch of fading color. Small details, easy to dismiss, began revealing the fatigue she could no longer hide. At first, she called it a bad night. Then 2 nights, then 3. She didn't stop. Perhaps I just need to focus more. The phrase repeated itself like a charm. She pressed on until the loom no longer kept time with her heartbeat, but tapped a dry rhythm from a body running out of strength. She believed that with a little more effort, a little more perfection, everything would return to the way it was. She didn't know that burnout never rewinds. It only advances quietly, relentlessly, like water seeping into cloth, until the whole spirit is drenched and we still pretend not to feel it. One morning, as first light slipped through the shutters, she stood and realized the fabric had lost its color, not because of dye, but because her eyes could no longer see beauty. The luminous threads that once moved her to tears had become mere tasks. Every strike of the loom was no longer music. It was obligation. She was no longer weaving with her soul, but with fear that if she stopped, she would disappear. That was the first whisper of weariness. It didn't shout. It came softly, in signs we easily dismiss. A sigh you don't notice. A morning without a reason to rise early. A small joy, suddenly meaningless. We call it stress, too busy, just until next week. But truly, it is the soul tapping at the door, saying, "I'm tired. Please stop." Still, she did not listen. Head down, hands clenched around the loom, eyes red, lamp burning. That night, a gust tilted the flame, and her shadow stretched across the wall. A thin, small figure, trying to hold the fabric upright. Outside, the world still praised her. Remarkable. She never stops. No one knew that inside the artist, everything was quietly breaking. And then, one night, as she reached for a new thread, it snapped. Not just one, many, as if the cloth itself refused to be forced any longer. She looked down at her hands, calloused fingers trembling, a tiny bead of blood staining the pale thread. She wanted to stop, but another voice rose within her. Clear, cold. If you stop, you will be nothing. It was the illusion of control, the echo of our modern world, where we believe we can do it all, that rest is weakness, that one more push will finally make us worthy. The sweetest trap of all. The more we try to control, the more we are controlled by fear. Her cloth had grown long enough to cover the entire room, but instead of radiant like the early days, it draped the space in a haze of fatigue. Threads that once sparkled like stars looked dull and gray. The faster she worked, the more the light faded. The more she chased perfection, the more the cloth lost its soul. Amid the loom's rhythm, another sound began. Not wind, not thread, but a soft, almost inaudible whisper from deep within the fabric, from her own heart. Rest. You have woven enough. She shook her head. In her mind, rest meant failure. So she went on, until her hands trembled so badly she could no longer hold the thread. That night, the loom fell silent. Not because she wished it, but because her body could no longer answer. The lamp dimmed, the room stood still, and only an unfinished cloth remained. She collapsed, and as her eyes closed, she realized she had never truly seen the tapestry she was making. She had always looked down and forgotten to look up at the beauty she herself had created. In the small room, the lamp went out. Moonlight poured across the unfinished cloth, the thing she had spent her life weaving. Silence. No loom, no thread. Only a weary breath and a hesitant heart, beating slowly as if unsure whether to continue or let go. She didn't know when sleep finally took her. She only knew that when her eyes closed, a gentle light appeared. Not bright, but warm, like a candle in the night. In a dream, she stood in a vast white field, wide as a cosmic cloth stretching to the horizon. A breeze carried the scent of wool, of time, and of peace. At the center sat an old man with silver hair beside a loom. He wasn't weaving. He simply sat holding a thread, as if listening to it. She stepped closer, her voice thin. "Who are you?" He smiled without looking up. "I'm just a weaver who learned how to rest between the lines." She looked around. His loom was empty, no threads at all. No fabric, no colors, no finished work. She frowned, confused. "You don't weave." He nodded gently. "Oh, I do. I weave," with silence. They stood in quiet for a few breaths. Then he spoke again, voice soft as air. "You've forgotten that between every thread, there must be space. Without space, the cloth cannot breathe. And without rest, the human heart forgets how to sing." Tears came, her first in years. "But I'm afraid to stop. If I rest, who will weave their dreams? If I stop, will they still need me?" The old teacher smiled. "You were not born to weave for the world. You were born to weave yourself back together. And sometimes, to do that, you must unspool the threads that have frayed." He lifted a single luminous filament to the moonlight. It was so fine it was almost invisible, yet it glowed with the warmth of a heartbeat. "This is the thread of stillness," he said. "Finer than breath. Use it, and whatever you touch will begin to heal." She reached out. The moment her fingers touched the thread, warmth spread through her body, as if a hand had been placed over her heart, whispering, "You are allowed to rest." For the first time in years, she inhaled deeply, not to push on, but to feel. The breath washed through her like a stream, rinsing the dust of 1,000 sleepless nights. The old man rose, kindness in his eyes. "You think your cloth is a masterpiece, don't you?" She nodded. "But if you weave without rest, every thread is pulled too tight. When one snaps, the rest will follow. Work will not destroy you. The absence of rest will take your soul." He touched the ground where loose threads lay among the grass. When his hand passed over them, they lifted, joined themselves. No force, no hurry. Becoming a fabric light as mist, shimmering in the night. "See," he said, "the universe weaves too, but it rests between its breaths. Day and night, waxing and waning moon, tides that rise and fall. Without pauses, there is no life." She stood in silence. All she had believed, that rest was weakness, stopping was failure, dissolved like thread in water. His voice softened to a near whisper. "You have woven enough, weaver. Now learn to step back from the loom. Only in your pause can you see the whole tapestry you have made." She bowed her head. Tears fell, not of exhaustion, but of release. She looked at her own cloth, the places once torn, the lines once crooked, and under the moon, they gleamed like the grain of a soul. She understood. Imperfection is what makes things true. As the old teacher turned to go, he left her one last line. "Let your hands rest. Only then will your heart begin to create again." He faded into light, as if he too were a thread in the invisible fabric the universe is always weaving. She awoke. Morning light edged through the window. The room was the same. The cloth was the same. And yet everything had changed. For the first time in years, she didn't touch the loom. She simply sat and let the light pass through the thin weave, watching dust dance in the air, like the music of stillness. She smiled, not because the fabric was perfect, but because she finally understood. Between the taut threads of life, it is the space of rest where we find ourselves again. From that morning on, she no longer wove as before. Not because her passion was gone, but because she had learned that rest is also part of the art. On the first day, she just sat. No loom, no thread, no rhythm, only a quiet morning. Light through a thin curtain, dust floating like tiny stars. At first, she felt empty, hands restless from years of motion, a mind trained to the beat of work. Value, for so long, had meant doing, not being. Then, something softened. She realized that in the silence, something was weaving. Not with her hands, but with her breath. She opened the window each morning and let the wind come in. When the breeze brushed the old cloth, it swayed. And in that faint sound, she heard the melody of peace. She no longer tried to make the cloth perfect. She hung it near the window, so light could pass through its gaps and scatter gentle flecks across the wall. Like old wounds healing under sunlight, she began to sleep again. Truly sleep after years of only resting, without ever letting go. The dreams returned. Not the chaotic storms of exhausted nights, but tender visions of the white field, the old teacher, and herself smiling, hands open beneath the stars. And then, something curious happened. When she returned to the loom, the threads felt softer, brighter, more willing. She no longer wove from fear of being left behind, but from the joy of being present. With each pass, she inhaled and exhaled, her heart beat, keeping time with the wider pulse of the world. She understood. Rest is not the end of creation. It is the place where energy is reborn. She began to teach the village youth to weave. Not only how to pull thread and keep rhythm, but the art of the pause. Look, she told them. Between every strike of the loom, there's a tiny moment, a breath where we stop and listen to the thread. That is where the magic happens. Without the pause, the cloth tangles. Without rest, the heart breaks. She no longer produced the grand, ornate fabrics for the royal court. She made smaller pieces, simple, light, full of feeling. On some, she stitched little messages. For anyone who had forgotten how to stop. One read, "You are not behind, you're simply breathing." Another, "Rest is also progress." And one she kept for herself. When you rest, the world keeps weaving for you. People began visiting, not just to buy cloth, but to sit in the sunlit room that smelled of wool, tea, and quiet. They said that when they entered, it felt as if the weight of time slipped off their shoulders, and the noise outside melted away, leaving only wind and heartbeat in harmony. One day a young artisan asked, "How do you weave better after resting so long?" She smiled, handed him a thread, and said, "Because now I don't weave with my hands alone. I weave with the stillness between heartbeats." She had learned what so few in a hurried age discover. Rest is not a luxury. It is the foundation of creativity. When you allow yourself to pause, your inner world begins to move. What you missed, what you denied, what you forgot, returns quietly, like threads finding their way back to the loom. One evening, as the light dimmed, she studied her newest cloth. Not perfect, a few crooked lines, a few open spaces, and beautiful in its own way. She whispered, smiling, "This is my true tapestry, where even mistakes become part of the art." In that moment she felt what she had lost for years, the pure joy of simply being. Now her story is no longer hers alone. It reflects each of us, living in a world that urges us to do more, run faster, be better, and sometimes forgets the art of just being. Pause a moment. Look at your life as a tapestry, being woven day by day. Every action is a thread. Every thought, feeling, and dream adds color. There are golden days. There are dark threads. And all of it, bright or dim, belongs to the larger picture. Ask yourself, how much have you woven without rest? How many nights have you stayed up to complete the fabric of success? How many times did you swallow tears to appear strong? How often did you force yourself to be useful, forgetting that a tapestry can't be beautiful if the weaver is torn inside? Our age praises perseverance, but rarely the perseverance of resting well. Rest is not avoidance. Rest is the courageous act of listening to yourself. Like a musician who knows that between two notes, the pause creates the melody. The weaver once believed if she stopped, she would vanish. Then, she learned that only by stopping could she become whole. Perhaps you are like her, a diligent artisan who forgot to step back and see the picture you've been making. Maybe you've woven career, success, family, reputation. But ask, is there still room in this fabric for me? If you're hearing this now, know that you still have time to repair your tapestry. You can begin tonight. No sweeping change required. Just one simple act. Pause. Sit. Breathe. Look at your hands, your shoulders, your eyes, the parts of you that have carried your work for so many years, and whisper to yourself, "Thank you. Now we can rest a little." You don't need to prove your worth with exhaustion. You don't need perfection to be loved. You don't need to be strong every moment to be seen. Often, it is only when you let go that life has room to bring you what you truly need. A tapestry is not beautiful because it is flawless, but because it keeps a rhythm between work and rest, light and shade, tension and softness. Your life doesn't need to be dazzling all the time. It needs spaces, so you can feel yourself alive. If you are tired today, if you can't find a single bright thread, if the noise has swallowed your song, remember the old teacher's words from the weaver's dream. You do not need to weave all the time. Sometimes, let the wind weave for you. Trust that even in your pause, the universe keeps weaving on your behalf. Opportunities, encounters, tenderness. They are already on their way, waiting for you to be open enough to receive. Imagine a few years from now. You look back on your life's cloth. You'll see crooked lines, tears, dark patches, and you'll see how they created depth and story. Without tears, light cannot shine through. Without shadow, true color is never known. Without rest, there is no art of living. Tonight, before sleep, place a hand over your heart and ask, what did I weave into my tapestry today? If the answer is peace, that is enough. Sometimes, by simply living fully in this moment, you are already weaving the rarest thread of all. Tomorrow when you wake, to begin not with rushing, but with a long, grateful breath. Each deep inhale pulls a bright thread through your life. Each smile lays a soft line across your soul. Each pause to listen returns your heart to its true rhythm, the rhythm of life, of peace, of you.